Hard to believe in 1940, 90% of the city's population was white. From the 1940s to the 1970s, black people were excluded from white areas by way of violence or economic discrimination called redlining. After the riots, white flight was frantic. 67,000 people fled in the summer following the uprising, 80,000 more the following year. The racial makeup of Sherwood Forest would flip from majority white to 75% black over the next decade.
In 1968, redlining was banned in the U.S., allowing black people to move into predominantly white neighborhoods. Unfortunately, this didn't give the outcome wanted. White flight was an after effect of redlining becoming illegal in the United States. Once it became easier for black people to move into white neighborhoods, the white people fled to the suburbs, leaving the neighborhoods predominantly African American. This caused the neighborhoods to be forgotten and therefore not as wealthy. In the past, the white flight affected black people because it caused the government to stop funding the neighborhoods that black people inhabited. This is because the white people fled away from the black people moving into the city, causing the racist government to stop funding the newly black inhabited cities. Instead, the government put money into a highway system that allowed the white people who fled into the suburbs to get to their jobs in the city. Today in our lives, we see the impact on black and white lives from white flight. Many people of color live in decaying neighborhoods with less income and resources and more crime. This is true because of the white people that fled to the suburbs when people of color moved into their old neighborhoods. Because of the housing discrimination and because people of color didn't get approved for loans, they couldn't live in better buildings and were forced into integrated neighborhoods by tenants. The white people didn't want this, so when they fled using the loans the government gave them, the urban areas became predominantly poor, and where people of color lived had fewer resources and money. That affects people of color's lives today because they are still living in those segregated neighborhoods and continue to be at disadvantage by not receiving the highest quality education, jobs, and homes, while predominantly white neighborhoods and suburbs still have the advantages. When people of color started moving into white communities, there was great backlash. Not only did white families start leaving, but they also tried to prevent the movement altogether. In A Raisin in the Sun, a black family living in Chicago buys a house in a white neighborhood, Clybourne Park, and one day before they move, a man from the welcoming committee comes to visit them, and this is some of what he says.
Now, it's a matter of the people of Clybourne Park believing, now rightly or wrongly, as I say, that for the happiness of all concerned, that our Negro families are happier when they live in their own communities.
What do you think you are going to gain by moving into a neighborhood where you just aren't wanted, and where some elements, well, people can get awful worked up when they feel that their whole way of life and everything they've ever worked for is threatened? This quote shows that Mr. Linder believes that the Youngers moving into Clybourne Park would cause disruption among the white families living here. One of these disruptions could very likely be these families moving away so that they do not have to live in the same community as African Americans, and instead in predominantly white neighborhoods. White flight has had a negative effect on people's way of thinking. For example, if you're only used to seeing one race in your community, you might have a biased opinion against other races. But if you get to experience people different from you, then your thoughts on other people may be different for the better. You can help to change these perspectives by learning and experiencing as many cultures as possible.